I'm Jessica Denson, host of Lights On with Jessica Denson, and I'm joined by Dean Obeidallah, host of SiriusXM's The Dean Obeidallah Show and the Substack, The Dean's Report. Dean, such a pleasure to finally have you on Lights On. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. You've been on my show, so I appreciate returning here to like a home and home series.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, it was a pleasure going on your show. A little bit infuriated with the state of affairs. We're going to get to that in a second with your latest Substack, but right now we are dealing with Russian asset Tulsi Gabbard just confirmed as DNI. Your thoughts, Dean?
I saw only one Republican voted against her, Mitch McConnell. Tulsi Gabbard has no place being DNI. But in reality, let's be honest, Donald Trump is going to run everything. So she's awful. Trump is worse. And it's not a situation where I think that she will have any kind of discretion. It'll be pure Trump all the time, whatever he wants of her. And Trump announced a short time ago he's opening negotiations with Vladimir Putin to solve Ukraine because he's going to solve that in a couple of hours and knock that out. And when I saw that he had gotten a prisoner released with Putin, I was pretty confident. And I said this on my show last night. I'm pretty sure he made a deal where he'll sell out the Ukrainians. That's how he got back the American teacher who deserved to be back. So I think that's what you're going to find out. And Tulsi Gabbard will do whatever Trump wants. I don't know if she should even have security clearance, but now she does. So.
It's truly unthinkable. Yeah, I thought the exact same thing with that, the teacher released. And, you think about this, I kind of you've got to remind yourself and remind the people, even with dictators, some positive things happen, but there's always a trade-off. And it was so clear that the trade-off here was going to be something that Putin is getting. Donald Trump is already asking for minerals from Ukraine for their resources. I mean, he's just basically, violating the world and talking about expansionism, Greenland. My God, Dean, Gaza, basically threatening to send U.S. troops and take over Gaza and completely displace the Palestinian people. I know this is something that's very close to your heart. It makes me sick what the U.S. government has funded there. What do you think about that?
Well, look, Donald Trump says from one time that we're going to send troops, then we're not going to send troops, right? So I have no idea what his real plan is. He just thinks at some point Gaza will be given to him. That's what he said yesterday. They're just going to give us Gaza. I don't have to buy it. I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. If Donald Trump does his own Trail of Tears, which is what they did to the Cherokee Nation, President Jackson, and forced the Native Americans out in a horrible march where many, many died, they do the same thing to the Palestinians. I can assure you the U.S. is not going to keep it. Netanyahu is going to want it, and they're going to ethnically cleanse the Christians and Muslims from Gaza, making it then under Israeli control, and it'll be like the settlements in the West Bank, where they're just Jewish-only settlements. And that's exactly what Netanyahu's want. And that's not new. I mean, this is something percolating on the right in Israel for a long period of time. The same thing is ethnically cleansing the West Bank, and even further, ethnically cleansing the Palestinian Christians and Muslims who live within Israel. They've talked about that as well. Now, we're far from that, thankfully, but we are at step one, which would be if they get rid of Gaza and clean the people out there, then my family in the West Bank, that's the next goal. They would drive them out because if the world allows 2 million people to be driven out just because of their religion, there's no limits to what the world will allow. So I have to hope that the world would stand up and there'd be sanctions against Trump, against, sadly, our nation because of Trump, and against Netanyahu to a greater degree.
Yeah, that's what you're going to start seeing. I mean, you're already seeing it. Our allies uniting together in defense of us almost. It's an unthinkable situation that we were putting in. I want to come back to Gaza at the end of this conversation, but before we do that, let's go to your Substack, which I got to tell you, Dean, I pretty much agree with every word of it. It's titled "Trump's Nonstop Lawlessness is Because He Was Never Held Accountable for His Crimes." You go through the abysmal failure of Merrick Garland in the Biden administration, the failure to, what I've been calling this for years is the consequences of impunity. It's the consequences of impunity, folks. And you go through the failure to uphold Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Of course, I led a march to try to get that to be enforced. And then you end with this. And this, I got a question for you on this, Dean, because this is the $1 million question out here. You say Trump is what happens when a criminal is not held accountable and then handed even more power. It now falls on us to preserve our republic from this aspiring tyrant. What do we do, Dean?
I think one is keep engaged. I just saw an alarming poll where only 20% of Democrats responded to a CBS poll that they are interested in what's going on. Democrats were all interested. It's the emotional toll that makes it hard for many people. I understand that. The sense of being overwhelmed, that you don't see Democratic leaders fighting hard enough, so you feel like, why should I fight? There's a lot of that. So one is staying engaged. Second is the idea of going to the streets. As the weather gets warmer, we have to do more protests. In nations where autocrats are on the rise or have power, people power is one of the biggest antidotes. It gives confidence and courage to judges and to even Democratic elected officials and some Republicans in battleground districts who are going to lose in 2026. And they know it to maybe stand up now early with us. So look, it's going to fall on us in that way. And, just going back slightly, Jessica, to what I wrote about it, I cited in the 1 year after January 6th, I wrote an article for MSNBC. And in there, I had a line where I said, if Merrick Garland does not move swiftly to hold Donald Trump accountable, historians will look back at that and say that's one of the key mistakes that led to the end of our democratic republic. That's what I put in writing in an MSNBC article in 2022, in January 2022. I cannot believe that we are here. I can't believe that Donald Trump was not held accountable for a coup and inciting a terrorist attack, and then won an election as president and now has more immunity than ever because the Supreme Court in the last year has articulated exactly the broad scope of immunity for a sitting president. This is how our republic ends. And if people check out, it will end. As simply as Donald Trump ignoring court orders. If he begins to ignore court orders and people don't go in the street, that's the end of the republic. That means he is a dictator. He rules by edict. There's nothing.
And he already has. I mean, judges have already said he's partially ignoring court orders. JD Vance is out there, and this is well documented, going years back from JD Vance, saying that this is an abridgment of executive power for judges to tell him what to do. Hello, checks and balances, but clearly this is the authoritarian playbook. I mean, Dean, can we really survive 4 years of this? This is the realistic question that's in the back of everybody's head.
Right.
Do we survive 4 years of this? Is there some eruption? I mean, don't we have to demand some more serious lawful action right now, like impeachment and removal right now, for what's already happening?
Look, I think you have to use the finite resources we have as human beings in a way that's effective. If you think demanding impeachment where it's not going to get a vote is effective, but it's going to get some press, perhaps that's a way of doing it. I'm not here to say which way is the perfect way. What I will say is Democratic leaders have to get out there and fight harder. And the last week and a half, we've seen more do rallies outside being pushed by groups like Indivisible, Move On, Working Families Party. Yeah. That's important. So we need to see these visible events where, because I wrote an article a few weeks ago about this, everyday Democratic leaders should look in the mirror and say, how do I punch Donald Trump in the face today? Every day, how do I punch this guy in the face? And I don't mean literally, I mean in terms of taking the media narrative from him, pushing him off his game. We're going to win and lose some of those battles, but right now we're losing all of those battles. So I am glad, and I applaud Democrats when they do the right thing. It's not enough, not close enough, but at least there's some signs of life. I mean, there's a reporting today that Akeem Jeffries was actually upset with Move On and Indivisible for pressuring Democrats to do more. I'm like, you're the wrong leader at the wrong time. If that reporting is true, now it's based on source reporting and Axios. I have a member of Congress on my show later. I'm going to ask him point blank. I know him for a long time if that's true or not. If that's true, there's different people who are the right leaders at the right time, the wrong leaders at the wrong time. And if Jeffries doesn't want to be the pit bull fighter, then stay as leader. That's what Democrats want. But pick people to be the fighters who are in your caucus, who are going to go out every day and punch Trump in the face. We need that. Literally go out there, make it clear. We're not going to sit back. We're not going to be passive in any way, take a knee. And it zaps the enthusiasm of the Democratic base when they don't see Democratic leaders fighting on issue after issue. And the good thing was, just go to the CBS poll over the weekend. While the poll itself kind of sucked, there was an important thing in it. Of Democrats, only 35% now say Democrats should find common ground with Trump. That might seem high, but it was over 50% a month ago. So we're getting to the point where Democrats are like, nope, no common ground anymore.
You don't compromise with terrorists. Sorry, folks.
No,
this is not a time for compromise. No. I mean, for me, and like anybody that's followed my movement, it is utterly hypocritical and really kind of like too fucking, excuse me. I have no patience for the continuing coup that every single lawmaker allowed on January 6th. In the name of a peaceful transfer of power, they allowed this to happen. There is a reason we have a constitution. You think that we're in a constitutional crisis right now? Well, you friggin' let it happen on January 6th by ignoring Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. I know you covered this on your show too, Dean.
We talked about
it. There's got to be some serious friggin' atonement from these Democratic leaders. And the fact of the matter is you can go out there. I'm glad they're having rallies. I'm glad they're getting loud. But, just impeachment, I feel the same way. We're not we're not mathematically in a place where it seems realistic. But how about like normalizing a conversation about what's right instead of being afraid of that conversation? Do you think Trump and MAGA and Elon Musk is afraid of normalizing friggin' insane conversations? Did you see that press conference yesterday where they totally gaslit the American people and tried to act like what they're doing is in the name of democracy and, you know, checks on abuse and waste? Like, they normalize the absolute insane, and we can't even normalize what's going to save us. Like, you know, be like South Korea, block, you know, jump over barricades. We have a triple canopy non-governmental security guards blocking members of Congress from entering federal buildings. Like, this is extremely serious. We need to think outside the box.
Absolutely. And that's where the challenge comes for Democrats. Standing behind a podium like Chuck Schumer does is not the way to lead a resistance movement. It may have been years ago, and that's the problem. A lot of the people are dinosaurs. They come from a different time. And the world they got along with was this: you can stand behind a podium and put out a press release, maybe even post and tweet out a statement, and it'll get some press. Those days are gone. Donald Trump is a savvy media manipulator, and corporate media loves him because he gives them ratings. It's a dying medium, corporate media. He's their last hope, and that's what's really concerning. That's why Democrats have to come up with unique ways to get press. They don't do it. Walking out together from the House and the Senate in one voice and having a press conference to oppose something, that's one thing they can do. The idea of not showing up for the session, saying we're going to try to challenge quorum, and that will get press. But you have to have then a message why you're doing it. Like, you can't just all walk out and go, we're walking out. Well, why are you walking out today? We're walking out because we want to get rid of big money in politics, let's say. We're walking out because they're trying to gut Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. Make it policy related. You're going to get that press coverage. Use it for a policy issue that moves people. I think Democrats have to lean into economic populism, being number one, getting big money out of politics, giving the power back to the people, taking it from the billionaire and the oligarchs, from the Democrats and Republican oligarchs. No more money. Yeah. Same limit on everyone. Let's go fight it out with Republicans in a fair playing field, not one where we're moving closer and closer to a time where the oligarchs control our lives and we're serfs with the charade of democracy. And that's what deeply concerns me. We're in worse than the Gilded Age. I don't know if we're going to get to the point where in the Gilded Age, 1880s, 1900, the progressive reform era came after it. I don't know if we get to that because they control the apparatus of government. They control the big money. They control the tech, big tech as well. We're up against a lot here. And so take people power to try to defeat this. And that's my hope. My number one priority is getting big money out of politics. That's my focus.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question the damage that Citizens United has done to politics in this country, and we're seeing it. I mean, here's the silver lining, I think, for all of this. If we were able to use the extremity of the situation that we're facing right now to do a complete clean house, you know, we don't need to quite start from scratch, but in a lot of ways we need to friggin' clean up. And if we can, you know, I'm of the belief that sometimes the worst garbage comes to the surface to be eradicated. And we're kind of at that moment. And if we could seize it, this is a great moment of opportunity.
Well, it's up to people. Again, that's up to everybody who's watching this, who engages in politics, who is concerned about the future, who wants to make sure that your children and grandchildren can have the same freedoms you did and not talk about what they used to be like, what the Democratic Republic was like. And then you live under a king now because Republicans have given up on democracy. To them, the Constitution and the rule of law and our Democratic Republic are merely speed bumps on the way to their achieving their dreams of a right-wing, ethno-nationalist nation that's controlled and dictated by their religious beliefs that are arguably, in their view, they're based on Christianity. And the reality is just about oppressing women. So this is what they want. They're not hiding it.
Not Christianity. Just like clarify that as a Christian, like it's not Christian.
Right. And so they have their own, they use what they want. I think we're at a point where people can't believe where we are and we sound hyperbolic. And what's so undermining a little bit of our argument is that the same Democrats who said Trump was a fascist, a threat to our freedoms, a threat to our democracy, don't use that language anymore. The same leaders. And I'm like, you're making us look like we are hyperbolic when we were on the same page before the election. Then Democrats lost and they're like, okay, that was just messaging. No, it wasn't. It was real. It's true. Trump is that threat. The guy attempted a coup. The guy incited a terrorist attack and now is pardoned the terrorists who attacked it. It's like bin Laden having the ability to pardon people who were in Guantanamo Bay after 9/11. That's what Trump did. And the fact that Democrats don't scream about a man who is a terrorist, a convicted felon, who should be in a prison cell is beyond me. But they're fighting, I guess, corporate media. They're fighting their own donors in some ways. Some of the corporate donors, the Wall Street donors, have a different agenda than the rest of us. And that's where the fight comes in. That's why getting big money out of politics will allow us to elect people who I think are more responsive.
Yeah, you're talking about, like, they say we're hyperbolic. Well, if we look at examples of countries like Hungary, I saw a great piece in Vox a couple weeks ago by Zach Beaucamp, and it was talking about lessons from Hungary. And basically the theme of it was, you're not overreacting and you got to act fast. Like, they will tell you you're overreacting. They will tell you, oh, just wait. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, no. Like, your instinct to think this is horrifying and a 5-alarm fire is right, and the time to handle it is now. And in line with what you're promoting, what you mentioned earlier, what I've been doing, I am all for people in the streets. They want to make you afraid. One thing that's been beautiful, and we started it with 14th Now. It grew with the 50-51 protest last week. It's going to continue on President's Day. And honestly, Dean, it's been popping up all over the country. Protests at Tesla, just pop-up protests everywhere. But this is a sign that the people are not afraid and that we wield the power. Sorry, folks, this is a democratic republic. It's our power, not yours. We give it to you and we can take it away. We wield the power. Anybody to be feared in this country, it is we, the people.
Well, and that's what you just touched on, to me, is the biggest divide between the GOP and Democratic leadership. Republican leaders fear their base. They really are feared. Democratic leaders, at best, tolerate us. Some like us, some connect with us, really. But some tolerate us, others ignore us. You see it on issue after issue. Like, why aren't you fighting with the Democratic bases on issue after issue? Like the ceasefire in Gaza in the last year, where 80% of Democrats wanted the ceasefire. You saw Democrats still voting lockstep to give all the weapons that Netanyahu wanted. There was no, because they don't fear the base. And that's just one example. There are other issues we can go through where, why aren't you fighting on these issues that are important to us? If you poll Democrats, and I share with people polls of Democrats who thought Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection should be barred from office, among Democrats was about 70%. If 70% of the Republican base believes something, I can assure you Republican leaders would be talking about it. But when 70% of the Democratic base believes something, they ignore us because it makes them uncomfortable. That's the disconnect we have. We have a disconnect between the grassroots and the top roots, right? We got to move up. We have to lead this party. And that's up to people who are listening about donating the right way, getting involved, running for office yourself. Don't rule it out. Think about it. Run for office. Make a change, primary or Democrat. Win or lose, you're going to push them, I can assure you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it back to Gaza, because there's, my God, Dean, let's start here. You and I have fearlessly covered the possibility that this election wasn't all on the up and up. Okay. We have listened to election security experts who have told us that we needed to at least conduct recounts at audits, and we just couldn't, we couldn't do that with a known cheater. We didn't have the time to do that. But, taking this election at face value and assuming that Donald Trump won and Kamala Harris lost, the one issue that gets me so bad is Gaza, is this country supporting genocide. And I really don't have patience for people who want to blame anybody in the Muslim or Arab community for this, for not, yes, it was obvious. And that's why I was out there being a cheerleader for Kamala Harris in spite of this massive disconnect on human rights. But, to support a government that's upholding genocide. And not only that, they're supporting the Donald Trump of Israel, someone who doesn't care about Jews or Muslims or any human being, who gave Hamas $2 billion, who is responsible for every hostage that is suffering in that country just as much as his terrorist friends are. Basically, the Biden administration, it was so tragic, supported the Trump of Israel. And we did not have to do it. We had the moral clarity, I would think, to not support this. And I am of the belief, even in spite of all the real election interference that I know there was in this election, that if we had had the moral clarity on that one issue, we could not have been defeated. And it is such a tragic situation.
It is tragic. It's very tragic. How it would have played out in the election, I'm not sure. Would have the 10, 11 million people who didn't vote, who were Democrats who voted last time, come out and vote? Perhaps. Would there have been more animation of voters to come out in certain areas, younger people? Perhaps. That I have to hope that, but we don't know. I have seen people who blame Arabs and Muslims, which are about 1% of the country, for somehow Vice President Harris losing. When I'm like,
I don't blame anyone. I only blame Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Right. There's a lot. The idea of picking and choosing parts of the Democratic base, who's responsible, is not helpful.
And Russia.
Going forward, right? Yeah. Looking forward. When in reality, when you look at it, still, about 70% of white men without a college degree voted for Donald Trump. I mean, the bigger numbers are there. And how would it play that? I don't know. For me, it's more about the humanity of what we saw in Gaza. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in my lifetime as someone who's followed the Middle East and Palestinian issues my entire life. It looks like something you would have seen in World War I or World War II, not on our watch in the world. And, the idea of Trump wanting to move the Palestinians because he says, it's a terrible situation there, to Jordan or Egypt against the will of the leaders of those countries doesn't make sense. It was Israel and the United States that caused devastation and destruction. Move the people, let the Palestinians, if they want to, move back to their ancestral homes within Israel. There's plenty of land there really is. And so let some come here to the United States of America. And if Trump will commit to temporarily let them leave and rebuild it, and somehow the UN, by Security Council, would enforce that, that'd be one thing. But it's up to the people to do that. Right now, he just wants to cleanse it to build resorts. And then he doesn't care what happens to the Palestinians.
It's a real estate opportunity for his family. It is sickening. All right. We have an action plan, Dean. We got to take back our power. We got to show it in the streets, and we got to get those friggin' Democrats to wake the hell up and do their job too.
Yep.
So thank you so much for joining me today on Lights On. Remind us what channel and what time we can find you on SiriusXM.
Sure. My show is on SiriusXM channel 127. It's called the Progress Channel. It's live 6 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, 5 nights a week. It's called the Dean Obeidallah Show. So just look up my name and you'll find it. I hope you'll listen. I hope you'll call in. We have a really vibrant community there as well. People are worked up. They're engaged, and they want to take the fight to Donald Trump. They want to punch him in the face every day, as I say. And that's what we're about.
Nice. Well, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. So it's great to finally connect. And we'll have to do this again sometime soon. Sure. Thanks, Dean.
And I look forward to having you on my show again.
Great. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today on Lights On. You can support Lights On by subscribing to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel, which is where you are watching this video. Also, please visit thejessicadenson.com. You can find everything about Lights On, my work, 14th Now, and also buy merch for the show. Thank you, everybody, so much. As always, keep your power and let your light shine.